Coach, coming into the spring, obviously you knew you had a couple needs on the roster. Just can you take us through the thought process and the execution of navigating the transfer portal and finding the right guys for Cincinnati?
Yeah. So, today's the day of basketball right now. You're building a program through class. Each class has got to be able to be really good. We've talked about building our program through the high school ranks and continue to put class after class together. There's also a roster management piece now with the way the rules are changing in terms of, portal and different things like that from a transfer process. So when we came into the spring, we felt like we signed a great early season class. Obviously, Tari was a part of that, but I haven't been able to comment on him yet. So he finally signed this in the late signing period. So we had some needs, and we wanted to make sure we got a little bit older and a little bit more experienced in certain positions. And our staff did an outstanding job. I couldn't be more excited about the work that our staff did, and unusual times in terms of the way we had to recruit.
How rare is the rap situation where it's a guy you played against and you got a chance to? I know you're big on scouting guys firsthand. You had to walk away from that one thinking, it'd be nice having that guy on my team. Now he is.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty the pattern of, I've got to have a pretty good feel and good evaluation on guys, and I think that pattern's shown a little bit in the guys that we've signed in terms of the transfer market. So, the Javens of the world and Chris Votes, guys I've coached against, had a chance to see live a lot and scout it, and obviously Rap falls into that. So the comfort level for what he brings was really good. The respect of his teammates was really good because he came in here and was pretty much the best player on the court that particular night. And I think the way he plays was really some of the things we're looking for in that position.
Sorry, Chad. Coach, it seems like you were pretty involved with both the transfers, Rap and DeJulius firsthand in terms of recruiting. I know some of that's kind of a question of time on how much a head coach can do that, but what's your particular philosophy on how much you want to maybe be involved, as the lead recruiter or specifically recruiting kids?
Well, I think in today's day and age, obviously when the head coach is involved, especially the main guy recruiting, that resonates with the young man and as well as the family and people around them. And when you're dealing with the transfer market, you're dealing with a very quick recruiting cycle. So you got to get your evaluation quickly, and then you got to jump in hard. Luckily for me, the evaluation already took place. So I called Rap immediately because I already had the evaluation I needed. For David, we had some really close connections with him and his people in terms of his high school coaches and his AAU coaches. So once I got the evaluation, which took place quickly, our video guy, George Nielsen, probably sends me 15 to 20 edits a day. He's up all day cutting stuff up and sending it. So as soon as we got that evaluation, we quickly jumped in on David. So decisions have to be made quick. Obviously, the recruiting piece in terms of evaluation, a lot like football, a lot of it's taking place over film for us for the first time. And once we decided we knew who we wanted to target, I jumped in pretty hard.
Joe Danneman, go ahead.
John, you mentioned the importance of getting older. Why was getting older a priority for you?
Well, I just think that, in our league, continuity and sustainability of roster, even nationally, is something that gives you an advantage. And, we don't have any guys in the transfer portal, which that's a win upon itself. But we're young, and our young guys got a chance to be really, really good. We just, had a few scholarships that we need to plug in some needs. And I think what Rap and David bring is more than just experience. They bring an ability to communicate. I think some leadership qualities. I've made mention several times we have a quiet team, so I think that their personalities are one that they enjoy communicating, enjoy connecting.
Mr. Vogel, go.
Coach, the young man you got from Washington yesterday, the letter came in. Give me a rundown on Tari, what he's all about. And it looked like, all I see is the online videos, but it looked like pretty good outside game too.
Yeah, George, he's a guy we targeted from pretty much the first week we got the job. And so when you're dealing with recruiting cycles, this spring signing class, outside of the transfers, it would maybe be considered a year-long cycle. Obviously, he committed to us in December. So we have yet to have a total year cycle of recruiting. And most recruiting classes matriculate over time off 2-3 year cycles. So we still haven't had a year cycle with anybody. But Tari was a young man that we targeted immediately. Dynamic athlete. Reminds me a lot of, Trey Scott coming out of high school with more perimeter ball skills. Power forward, can really put the ball on the floor. Great passer, long, really athletic. I just think he's a guy that you see as a potential all-conference guy in his future because of what he brings to the table and his work ethic. And I think he's a really good player in our league. And he came from a state championship team, played for Brannen Roy, an NBA rookie of the year, an NBA veteran. So he knows how to win. And, if you look at all our guys, they've all won at high levels, which is really important to our staff.
GOD, go.
Hey, John, what was the process like from you shifting from disappointment from end of season NCAA tournament not happening to getting back into recruiting and start focusing on next year? Because, look, we're all human beings here, and dealing with that kind of emotion of disappointment to now getting excited about potentially putting together a team for next year. What was that process like? Was there a light bulb moment when you just kind of snapped out of it and said it's time to go?
Yeah. So we only had time one day, and then our guys left for spring break. And spring break is when the coronavirus hit and we were all left to be at home. So I had one day to talk to our guys, and they were numb. And so I didn't realize, I knew where I was at, but I had no idea where our guys were at emotionally and mentally until that day. It was the next day after coming back from Fort Worth. And that hit me pretty hard. And it took me a while to really make sure they were okay. It took that whole next week of constant communication, making sure that, because there was no closure to the season. And then it became a realization, okay, is everybody in place for our family? And then no recruiting. You're used to finishing your last game and immediately going on the road the next day recruiting. So now it's like no recruiting. All right, what do I do next? And you found out you had to recruit, from home and on a computer. And once you had a better understanding of that, you just attacked it. And things happen fast. And, everything's moved up a month. Scheduling's moved up. Recruiting's moved up. Kids are committing earlier. Everything has been expedited because coaches are at home with nothing to do. So to answer your specific question, it took a second because we had to get our guys emotionally where they needed to be because I was really concerned for them. And then my family I was concerned with because of the virus and the pandemic. I just lost my dad. And then we were in a situation where we had to really jump into recruiting. So it was all at one time and we had to get control of it.
Jed, go ahead.
Can't be me. I had a company come in and put my Wi-Fi on extra strength here. So,
George, you want to go?
Yeah, I can fire. Coach, have you had contact with Keith Williams, and what's that process going through? And is there any idea when that process may end? I guess there's not, because we don't know what the heck's going to go on with the draft, right?
Yeah, we talk to Keith every day. We talk to all our guys every day. We have a list of guys that everybody touches each day, and Keith's been a part of all the Zoom team calls we've had and everything. He talks to each other all the time. There is no process right now, George, and that's what I had to explain to Keith, and I explained to Chris Vogt as well. Right now, there is no process. The NBA's got to decide if they're going to move the draft back, and then the NCAA's got to decide what they're going to do. But typically, the process is individual interviews, individual workouts, and preparation for combine invites. And right now, unfortunately for Keith and Chris, none of that's taking place.
Chad, you got one?
Coach, back to Tari real quick. Can you take me through the development you saw from him and watching him through this high school season? Because he looked like by the time he got to the state championship that he had really upped his game. And I don't think people understand how good the talent is in the Seattle area and in the state of Washington. For him to dominate like he did was really impressive.
Yeah, so we saw Tari at the NBA camp. It was one of the first spring event that we could go out to. It might have very well been the first event I went to as the head coach at Cincinnati. And, that's a top 100 camp nationally. And got a chance to saw him there and just really, really loved his length. Didn't score a lot in it, but his length and his passing abilities. He was the one guy that, everybody was trying to showcase their skills and he was trying to win. And that really stood out to me. And Coach G did a phenomenal job building the relationship, and then got a chance to go out to Seattle and see him several times. And his growth and his development, not only from a basketball standpoint, but from a maturity standpoint and a leadership standpoint, Chad, really came leaps and bounds. And then to take his team to a state title and be the state player of the year in a state, in a city that churns out high major players. I mean, there's a reason the University of Washington's had the great success they've had, because they got an amazing vet of talent at home. So it was a tremendous opportunity for us to get a player that I think can impact our program for many years to come.
Was there any late push? Was there any having to fight people off because he hadn't signed yet and he played as well as he did in the state tournament?
You know, it's funny. Luke and I joke about it. You know, commitments in football don't mean the same thing as commitments in basketball. And not really. I mean, I think there was a respect level. Everybody, Chad, I've been in this situation a lot where guys commit and sign late, and this was probably the least one I sweated or had anxiety about, because the young man and his family are so upfront and honest and committed to the University of Cincinnati. So I had no anxiety.
Justin, go ahead.
Coach, you obviously had a number of transfers last year, grad transfers specifically. Did you learn anything from that process that you think will help with Rapp or even David, a multi-year transfer?
I learned some things. Yeah, I learned some things. I think, you know, understanding that when you're dealing with the grad transfer piece, that there's an expectation level for them, but you want to sign guys that want to win. I felt like we did that this year. I mean, the guys that we signed really wanted to win. And that was really important, because sometimes it can just be about what's the next step in their career. And there's no buy-in to winning because it's a one-year deal. And that's what has always been a fear of mine for grad transfers. But we've been in the market twice. We took one in Northern Kentucky. We won a championship. We took several last year. We won a championship. So I think we'll always be in the market. I just hope not to sign as many as we did last year. Like we signed one this year, which is about what I'd like to do.
Brandon Seho, go ahead.
John, back to Keith and Chris. How much do you encourage them testing those NBA waters, and if they come back, how can that positively impact your team besides just coming back? What can they take from those experiences and benefit towards your team?
So absolutely encourage the underclassmen to do that if they're in a position where they feel like they're going to get workouts, or we feel like they're going to get workouts, or have potential to be invited to combines and whatnot. Because it is a process that's made for the student athlete, while also working out with us and doing all the things that we need to do to be successful in the summer. I don't know that we won't get much out of this year's process because there isn't one, but typically what happens is you get feedback from the scouts, you get feedback from their workouts on the things they got to get better at. I think it puts your program in a good light that you got guys that are good enough to test the waters of the NBA draft that are underclassmen. And so I think there's a number of positives that we can take from it, as long as you have a player and a family who control the process and don't allow outside forces to control the process. And that's always my communication with them. You know, if outside forces start to control the process, then you need to stay in the draft because you're not welcome back here. But if you treat the process the way these two young men are treating it, then it's a positive for everybody. And I would welcome all our underclassmen to take a look at doing that if they're put in position to.
George, go ahead.
With the current situation and its effect on recruiting down the road, is there much? Everybody's in the same boat, but I don't know. Does it feel like a late start with what's going on?
In regards to recruiting?
Yes.
Yeah. Just the evaluation piece is so difficult. I also think there's a herd mentality, George. As soon as somebody hits the internet with an offer, everybody jumps on and offers, which is one of the things I struggle with the most in recruiting because, I mean, did you stay up all night and watch 9 million pieces of film in the last 3 hours? I mean, it's coaches don't have anything to do right now, so they're calling everybody and placing offers, and young men are going to have to cipher between those offers. How it affects the 2021 class is what I'm most intrigued about. If we don't have a summer period, if guys started committing, I think schools can start making mistakes, and that's what I've guarded our staff against. We can't make mistakes in recruiting. You know, we have a motto in recruiting: if you make a mistake and you miss on a great player, he'll go beat you twice a year. If you make a mistake and take the wrong player, he beats you every day.
Jed, go ahead.
Coach, as it relates to this pandemic, how often are you in contact with John Cunningham, and what are those conversations like? How much update are you getting from your boss about the current situation?
Yeah, I'm pretty constant contact with our administration in terms of just getting a feel for things, and finding out what their industry experts are saying, finding out what our industry experts are saying on our side, and just sharing thoughts and ideas more than anything. We couldn't, we're all in the dark. We're all relative to, it seems like, listen, you guys are smarter than I am, but each state government, each state, spot, Chad shaking his head, no, I realize I'm right in. But each state government, is kind of following that lead. So we're in constant contact, but also the well-being of our players is the number one priority. Yeah.
Joe Danneman, go ahead.
All right, John, I got two questions here. The first one is a goofy question. The second one's a real question. The first one is, man, you look really well groomed with the beard and the hair. I mean, my hair is an absolute mess right now. What are you doing to keep this together? Because it looks like, at least on the sides, that you got a cut.
I did not. I got lucky, pure luck, that I got my hair cut right before we were shut down. So got lucky there, and the beard, Lisa's starting to like it now, and it's easy to roll out of bed with this thing.
Okay, the real question is recruiting Tari. This is a guy from Seattle. We're in Ohio. Can you take me behind the scenes of showing this guy everything he's going to see on campus when he's thousands of miles away, and how you convinced a guy from Seattle to come to Cincinnati and play basketball?
Well, I think Jason G, did a phenomenal job building a relationship early on, and building a relationship of trust, and got him excited about the tradition of Cincinnati. We've got a great brand, and that brand crosses from states and across the country. So that all assisted, and then we just worked really hard in getting out there. I think as far as the staff goes, we were out there more than anybody. So we were flying back and forth from Seattle quite a bit. I mean, I went out right during the season to go see him. So spent a lot of time, taking that flight back and forth, and he bought into it, got his list down to 3, and really stayed committed to a process where you constantly knew you stood with him. Major priority for us because of our need in that position. It felt like he was a great fit for our program. So, and then there's a level of, he grew up in LA. He was born in LA, he spent some time there, spent some time in Seattle. He was comfortable moving around a little bit. And I think he liked the idea of the excitement level and the passion of our fan base, because basketball in this area, I've said it many times, I mean, you don't get much more passionate fans than the greater Cincinnati area when it comes to basketball.
Pat Brannen, go ahead.
Hey, John. I'm pinch hitting for the Inquirer today. Appreciate you guys doing this. I wanted to ask, it occurs to me that a lot of people are talking about the logistics of college football right now, and some of the challenges that they will have to get the college football season in when that time comes. But basketball obviously comes right on the heels of that. The timelines are kind of right up against each other. When you think about some of the challenges that college basketball might have in terms of trying to get going in the late autumn, does anything stick out to you? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'll give you one that I don't think anybody knows but coaches. If you have a young man that needs surgery at the end of the season, and it's a surgery that's going to require a long rehab process, there's no elective surgeries. So now you're in a situation where guys could be missing half the season. If you got a certain tear and all of a sudden you're out 5 months, you don't get that surgery till August, when you could have had the surgery, kind of like Scottie Pippen, I guess, if you watched The Last Dance the other night. You could have, without choice, you didn't have that choice, right? So I think that's a piece of it. Again, I don't want it to be a poor me, but just answer your question. So, the dynamics of recruiting for football, if football is played, our recruiting helps, because we brought Tari Eason to Chad would remember better than I would, probably the UCF game, not the UCF game. Was it the UCF game? So different things like that from a recruiting standpoint help with football going on, and the dynamics of the brand. And there's just a number of things. And then, Pat, I think another thing is we don't know. I think there's other things that'll pop up. I didn't even think of injuries until they told me they couldn't have them, elective surgery. So I think there's a number of things. I think from the financials, ability to sustain financially of an institution, football season is really, really important. And that's what we're all monitoring right now. So I think it all affects us in ways that we can't even imagine right now. And certainly I'm not smart enough. That's why I'm not in a position to make decisions like our administration. I'm sure they thought even more through that.
Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate it.
I will go Jed, then Chad.
Coach, I promised I was going to ask you this question before your last answer, but the last dance is sort of the one thing that we've all had to sort of watch together in terms of sports in the last few months. I wanted to get your take on that documentary and what you thought of it as a coach, watching some of the greatest competitors describe how they sort of finished up one of the great basketball dynasties of all time.
Well, that was in my wheelhouse. I'm 46, so it was right. It was the glory days. And, it's funny, we're all in different generations. So I never forget watching the highlights reminding me of my dad, who thought Oscar Robertson was the greatest player of all time, bar none, didn't matter who it was. And I remember him looking at me one day after Jordan got a steal and was like, I think it might be Jordan and Oscar now, son. You know what I mean? So I sent a text out to all our players with a text thread. I'm like, Jordan's the GOAT. Boy, did they fire back some different stuff about LeBron. And, we really had it going there for a while. And so it was really special for our players to get a chance to see the greatness of that team and the ins and outs of what it took to be great. And, there was one comment in there that is foreign to these days. Is when Jordan said, they gave me a 10% chance I get injured again. And everybody kept calling about the 10% chance. Well, there was a 90% chance I was going to be completely healthy. It's not looked at these days. Guys, there's a hangnail. It's not like, whoa, let's make sure everything's fine. Let's make sure we're okay. Let's make sure we have our legs for the next game. Where, back then it was just different. And so don't think I didn't share some of the quotes that Jordan had to our guys and different things like that. So selfishly, it was great because it took me back to my youth. And my 13-year-old twins lasted till 9:20. So started at 9, went to 11. They lasted till 9:20. The only thing they recognized the entire time was the Jordan shoes because they just keep getting recycled every year.
All right, Chad, go ahead.
Yours did better than mine, Coach. My 9-year-old made it 3 minutes and said, "This is boring." With David, looking at eligibility, obviously the first hurdle is finding out what happens in May when they vote, right? And if that becomes eligible for 2020, 2021, then the question answers itself. But are you also exploring waiver options and everything to get him eligible for this coming season?
Yeah, well, we can't put the cart before the horse on this one. We'll wait for the vote to happen and then we'll make the decision from there, the direction we decide to go in.
Can you tell us a little bit about him? I think he's the one guy you haven't really talked about.
Yeah, so David is played for Juan Rigman in high school, who we have a really close relationship with. And one of the things of being in Northern Kentucky, you're in Detroit all the time playing. 3-4 times a year with teams you play in the tournament being up there. So we spent a lot of time in Detroit recruiting and built a relationship with Juan. And David actually would come down to the team camps when I was in Northern Kentucky, but wouldn't play because Juan wanted his mid-major kids to be seen, and he would sit his high major guys. So, I've known about David for a long time. There was a relationship with his people around him. And obviously watching, Michigan, Coach Beeline and Coach Howard, watching his development was really impressive. So, he was always on someone that we knew of. They had no idea he was transferring. And when he did, he had a Final Four very quickly. And a large part of that was prior relationships. And then we were able to build a relationship with his family that they felt comfortable with him coming to the University of Cincinnati. Dynamic playmaker, point guard, I think, multiple position guy, but dynamic with the ball in his hands, both scorer, creator, finisher, really good on the ball defender. We have a rating system that we utilize for our transfers as part of our advanced metrics numbers. And he rated out the highest of any of the grad transfers that we were involved with.
Justin, go ahead.
Coach, do you have any update on Prince and his health situation?
I don't.
Any other questions in the queue? Dan Howard.
I have a question, Cos. Yes. Do you have anybody, Coach, that has a pending surgery that's been put on hold?
Not as of right now, no. That's what I told our guys to do. I said, do not go to the hospital, do not get injured. That's the rule in the Brannen house. Nobody gets hurt to go to the hospital. The rule in everybody else's house is nobody gets hurt to go to the hospital. That's the first thing we go over in every Zoom call.